everyone, and welcome to the Performance Growthcast. I'm Polina, head of PR at AdChampagne, and today I'm so thrilled to welcome Summer Liu, Chief Marketing Officer at SocialPeta, in our online studio. So, hey, Summer, thanks for joining us today. How's it going?
Well, it's going very well, and thanks for AdChampagne's invitation. I'm so honored to be here and share some insights.
That's great. Actually, I'm very excited about our upcoming conversation. So, to kick off with our dialogue, I'd like to focus a bit on your personal career path and your experience at SocialPeta. So, you've been in the ad intelligence space for over a decade, for 2026. And I'm really curious what drew you to this field and what does leading marketing at SocialPeta look like from the inside, and what do you basically do on the daily basis?
Okay, thanks for your question. To be honest, this is a very good timing to review this experience in SocialPeta because I joined this team like exactly 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It's like in March 2016. And we started this global ad intelligence business because at that time we noticed that there was a trend that lots of the domestic gaming companies went global and they want to acquire the overseas users. So they do like a paid ads campaign on Meta. However, the Meta, they all know that Meta ads are crucial, but there was no a good resource for them to see the trend. So we delved into the data infrastructure for the ad creatives. And that's how like our business established. To the current point, I have worked as like a sales and also like a marketing. To be honest, we are like marketing intelligence SaaS, and as a B2B business, we have the very typical marketing approaches. For example, like our conversation, the content marketing is one of a good way to improve brand awareness, and also one of like my daily works. And we also have you see we also have other approaches like the white papers and also some local conference. So yeah, to sum up, those are the very main methods we work on the marketing side.
That actually sounds really great, and I'm happy that we are kind of in the perfect timings, so we can reflect on the last 10 years of social media growth and discuss it. That's really nice. So you built the platform to solve a very specific pain point for gaming companies going global, and now you have already kind of 2 billion creatives tracked, and you have this incredible bird's eye view of the whole market. And for our listeners who might be not very familiar to the platform, what kind of questions do your clients typically come to you with, and what are they trying to understand when they use the platform?
Okay, thank you. So for SocialPeta, we are like the ad intelligence platform, and we also reckon us as the best ad
Yeah.
intelligence platform. And most of our clients or our users, they are like the user acquisition people, or they may like the creative designers from like gaming companies or agencies. They are paying to use us is they want to track and analysis their competitor ads on the very main platforms, say Meta, TikTok, Google. You mentioned like gaming companies, if they want to like acquire the global users, like Meta plus Google almost as necessary networks. What's more, you can also imagine that you are the marketers and you want to uncode the advertising platform with very limited time and budgets. So you can follow like the path of the similar products, like your competitor, what kind of like creatives they ever run and which are the winning ones. And you can follow the path and it can avoid some test or of timing and also the waste of time. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, it's actually makes perfect sense because, as for me, it's about this risk mitigation of your own strategy by learning from the entire market, and that's really great that social beta allows companies to track all this analytics. And speaking of the market, let's come closer to the main block of our podcast and dive deeper into some of the macro trends you are seeing in the data. So you recently launched the Global Mobile Apps Marketing White Paper in collaboration with AdChampagne. I should mention that we are really grateful for this collaboration. And I personally think that this report is such a comprehensive and insightful material. So I genuinely recommend our listeners to download and look it through. And you can find the link in the bio. The report shows a really interesting shift in who is advertising right now and how. So there's a fascinating trend as the number of active advertisers is shrinking, but the volume of creatives per advertiser has exploded. So what does this consolidation tell us about the state of competition in mobile advertising today?
Well, first of all, thanks to AdChampagne's data because your company has a very, first-hand and practical experience and data in this business. And you're right. From this annual report, we see some sad news for the non-gaming application advertisers because you can clearly tell that all the creatives the lifetime of those ads is shortening. And from SocialPeta's perspective, we reckon it's not the trend purely for last year. It actually lasts for several years. And on my side, I think the AI technology contributes to this fact. Like tools, we heard a lot Nano Banana, Midjourney are widely used in advertising, which make the barrier of massive production for ads are getting lower than ever. And another aspect I need to say is the mechanism of the very main advertising platforms. Yeah.
AI should be considered as a benefit as it allows agencies like AdChampagne and creative producers to build visuals much faster. Yet, with this lower entry barrier that you mentioned, the production quality might be questionable sometimes, but we'll touch upon this issue a little bit later and discuss this correlation. So, as advertisers produce more, it seems that they are also focusing their efforts on one specific platform, according to your data. And there's a clear and growing shift in ad creatives toward iOS platform over Android. So, from SocialPeta's perspective, what is driving this? Is it purely about user value, or there are any other factors that can influence this metric?
Okay. Well, personally speaking, for example, I've been in this business for over a decade, and I have to admit that the user value you just mentioned is the crucial reason because whatever your product genre is, gaming, non-gaming, or AI short drama, your final goal is always revenue. And so every advertiser in the world targets US iOS user or players because they can bring the best returns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it always comes back to revenue and the value of the user. It's one category that has completely exploded in the last year, chasing that high value user. I think our listeners could guess this vertical. It's AI apps. So the report calls it a knockout match where many advertisers just couldn't compete, as nearly half of the rest verticals advertisers just disappeared. And when SocialPeta analyzes the data, what separates the AI apps that succeeded from the ones that showed not that high results?
Well, because our background is statistics, what we can analyze is more about advertising aspects. So from our dashboard, I have to admit that the top advertisers are popular app genres, say like short drama and also related genres like a novel or audiobook. We see that they use very successful formulas in their practical actives. For example, they use the very dramatic start in the first seconds, like first 3 seconds. We may also call it like a hook to win the viewer's attention immediately. And some of them may also have a very winding story, but the viewers are expecting like a twisted ending. So they also use the creative that all of a sudden the story starts attractive but also ends suddenly, and they will leave like a guidance or a request like watch this end for free, something like that. We see a lot. So to sum up, those successful advertisers will fully consider the character of the product to maximize conflicts and contracts in a short time.
We can claim that great hook, create a story with an information gap that users feel compelled to close, as not completing it feels like fear of missing out. But I want to get a bit more specific and ask you, when you look at some of the top AI apps, what do you see? So, for example, the creative strategies of top AI apps like Perplexity or Dola, which I mentioned in our collaborative report, are they doing something fundamentally different from other categories? And what does SocialPeta's data show about how they advertise?
Well, those two are very successful cases on campaigns. I see that like Perplexity's campaign strategy are more diverse in creative formats. We can see them using like videos, carousels, and images simultaneously. And what's extinguished is the proportion of carousels for this app is higher like than the other like non-gaming apps. Meanwhile, speaking of like networks, they run Meta and Google Ads a lot. And if let's say the creative content, they have both the very traditional feature demonstration ads, especially using these ads in the carousel to demonstrate the features are more clear. Meanwhile, for videos, they use a lot of real people conversation, interviews, using this to explain the features of their own products. So this is basically the key, I think, for like Perplexity. And for Dora, we see that our dashboards, almost all the ads are videos, and they use just a little bit image. And for networks, we see they run like a Meta, but also Google and TikTok, and also Up11. And their creatives are more like a real people narrative. What's the product usage? What's the features? And the videos is made according to the person's description. So that's like the different strategies comparing those two products.
So we might see that within the same category, there might be some different approaches. So Perplexity using diverse formats to explain features, and Dollar focuses on narrative video formats. And we can see that those apps are trying to adapt their ad strategies to the core products. Yet what's more interesting for us here is that it seems like most of this ad activity is concentrated in only one place. And I'm speaking about North America. So North America accounts for over 64% of all AI app creatives. And I'm really curious why market is so dominant, and does the data suggest opportunities in other regions that are being overlooked?
Well, the answer to this question would be very similar to the very previous one, because we all know North American users have the best app will make them the most valuable users, especially like all the AI apps, they run subscription model. So which means users subscription fee the dominant income for those AI apps. That's why, like I mentioned, all the AI apps, the globally, not only, a part of developers, developers global, maybe in Central East Europe, in Vietnam, in Pakistan, or in China. We have a lot of clients globally, and they may developing AI apps for the marketers. The biggest challenge is how to win the American users. So yeah, they make the best values comparing with other regions. Meanwhile, we cannot say that United States is only target. From our data, we also see some regions may overlooked. For example, Europe, which also has very good app, and also Japan and Korea. We all still the very traditional tier one countries and regions.
So I see it's kind of that same focus on revenue and average revenue per user specifically that drives this regional preference, and the trends that you mentioned for other countries like that being overlooked, Europe and Asia. I think that's the thing that we should keep in mind and focus on while speaking about this mobile marketing trends. And now let's talk more about the creatives themselves. Report highlights some key creative strategies, like real people interviews that you previously mentioned, full screen demonstration, and are there any specific formats or maybe styles that are consistently outperforming others?
Yeah, we do see this trend, like the case we just talked about. Like Perplexity and Dora, they are the very perfect case. They use lot of like real people interviews. They like focusing on the people of interviewees to have the conversation, and the conversation will bring out the product features and their expertise. This took a lot of proportion of their creatives in our dashboard. And another one we see is like a split screen demonstration. They may involve some, technical KOL, and while the technical KOL introducing, and they have another screen to demonstrate how it operates on the specific product. From our dashboard, like AI apps use those formats. And I also see the trend, like I believe they learn like the interview format from gaming apps. Like in the past years, we also analyze the data, and I also give some presentation. Lot of like winning creatives, they use like interviews as the creatives. It started, I believe, from a lot of casino games and also some like strategy games.
Yeah, actually, that's such an accurate point that winning strategies from gaming often find their way into other verticals and maybe sometimes vice versa. And it seems to be a trend of adopting some ad mechanics or even monetization models from gaming to non-gaming app verticals. And we also talked about this in our latest podcast with Game Light. But with the volume of creatives exploding, it feels like the lifespan of any single creative is getting shorter and shorter. Creative fatigue seems to be really accelerating. And from the data, how quickly are winning strategies burning out? And what do the top advertisers do differently to manage that cycle?
You're right. The lifespan for creatives is shortening, and this is not a new topic. This is like the mechanism and the algorithm
Mm.
like decides like the trend. And for the specific lifespan, well, we need to say that it highly depends on both like the network mechanism, how they decide to show what kind of ads to the audience, and also like how is the creative quality. As far as we know, that Meta is the most creative cost network,
Mm.
and you probably need to update the creatives weekly. So this is like a routine, like a routine figure our clients like told us. And for those like top advertisers, when they like reach the scale phase, they need to prepare creative inspirations a lot. And they collaborate with us. They use SocialPeta to track what's going on the market, and they can make various of creatives very quickly. With also they may combine some AI tools we just mentioned.
So the top advertisers are kind of in a constant state of production, and they are always kind of feeding the machine. And it seems like from the this bird's eye view of the market, that what they are feeding it is predominantly video formats. And the report mentions that continuing popularity of story-based live action videos in Japan and South Korea. So I'm interested in is video still the dominant format globally, or are there markets where static images or other formats, like maybe interactive ones, like playables, are more effective?
There is no question that videos are still the dominant formats. It work very good crossing different products, gaming, non-gaming, or even different like non-gaming genres, because the very basic logic is like the more narrative for your creative format, the better performance it can bring. The very mainstream networks we talk about, like Facebook, TikTok, or Reels, in the original app, all the contents are the videos for those social media. The user, you will naturally be attracted to the video ads. Because when you slide your news feed and all the contents are video. So if there is a video as it perform better because it perform naturally in the app. And yeah, we also admit there still are some exceptions. As far as I know, some central regions they still do not have very good mobile infrastructures, and it may cost a lot of traffic when they see the video content, a lot of fees. So they may choose images to do the campaign. For example, maybe Indonesia or Philippines, in those countries and regions. Meanwhile, for certain products the Perplexity we talk about, they also use images, the images in the carousels to show the chat interface of these products, because let's say it combines the product's character and they utilize image that can really express the product's feature, and it also works good.
I should say that as for me, that's totally truthful that the format has to match to the platform and the product itself. And
Yes.
you mentioned earlier that AI tools are helping advertisers to produce this huge volume of video. But can you actually see a difference in the results? So when you look at the data, can you see any difference in performance between creatives that are fully AI generated and those that use AI just to boost human creativity or just to make some drafts or visuals using AI, but they do not create the creatives from scratch just using the AI tools?
Well, this is also a very good question. In our inner team, our data analyst team, when we produce any reports to forecast any trends, we will also judge whether the contents we are seeing are correct. Or the AI creatives is always a controversial question and topic. We always ask ourselves a similar question: how do you tell those ads are made from AI? And are you sure about this? If most of us reckon okay, those ads are AI made, we also wondering can they guarantee the performance? Meanwhile, they want to have the good efficiency. So we talked about this in our inner team all the time, and we also communicate with our clients who are the marketers. To be honest, what we all reckon is true that for certain AI products, this is for sure that they will naturally accept AI ads, a friend, AI chat, or AI AI GC products, videos or tattoo products. They naturally the viewers can naturally accept AI ads among those products. That's also the reason we can see quite a lot of AI ads labeled top ads for those products on SocialPeta. And speaking of other products, we also can hear some different voices. Some advertisers, they will tell us that the viewers just do not like the AI ads because they feed up with a lot of UGCs, and in recent years they see some UGC the person they can clearly tell it's AI person, and they see it a lot. They may get just get bored on this.
Yeah, so maybe for those AI products, AI generated ads feel authentic to the brand, and people can tolerate this AI creation. But for other categories, it sometimes can backfire.
Yeah.
So that's a really interesting distinction. Thank you so much. And the effectiveness of creative strategy, especially with AI, really depends on the context of the product itself. And that brings us to a broader topic. So I'm really curious how these strategies change globally. So let's start with the most competitive market of all that we've already discussed. North America has the highest creatives per advertiser among all regions. And what does does that intensity of creative output tell us about how competitive the market is there, and what creative approaches are actually cutting through?
Yeah, North American is always like the most competitive region. As an advertiser, first rule is the creative quantity is crucial. You need to guarantee that while you are scaling, you have the creative quantity enough, to replace the old one. Meanwhile, we see recently, along with the video pace, and also like the background music, all the pace needs to be accelerated, need to be really fast. They change like the video cameras a lot, and along with very energetic music in the videos, those videos perform better than the other, piece one. And another rule we see always work is pet elements, dogs, cats, either real dogs or cats or AI dogs or cats. They all work very good.
That's actually a very interesting point. I haven't even thought about those usage of pets. But as I see in North America, it's a game of volume and speed. But when we look at the markets like Japan and South Korea and maybe Asia in general, the data shows a very different picture, especially when it comes to adopting new technologies like AI in the creative process. So those countries stand out as markets where AI generated creatives are still lagging behind Western markets. So why do you think these markets are slower to adopt AI creative, and do you see that changing?
Like geographically, Japan, they are different compared with Western, countries because they are like more isolated, which means they are also very independent as a whole culture. That's why they may have their own characters. So typically, also as like a people who in this marketing business for quite a long time, I communicate a lot of like publishers who have worked on Japan or Korea markets. When they produce like the creatives, they will specifically make another series for Japan and Korea, because the creatives for Japan and Korea, they request totally different style, and always request some local elements, say K-pop and also VTuber elements, because those are the popular elements can be accepted by the Z generation. So those either K-pop or VTuber, they emphasize on the feeling of a real person, a real person. So they prefer the real person sense. However, the AI element may reduce this kind of sense, and also reduce those localization advantages. So maybe if they can find a good combination of AI and those like very local characters, the audience in Japan or Korea, they can get used to it.
Actually, I think those regions should, as you said, find that balance between AI usage authenticity and some localization. And that's a key insight, that localization can still trump pure technological efficiency. And each region definitely has its own unique challenge and unique path, even in advertising strategies. In Europe, for example, the challenge isn't about competition, but monetization, as this region has the most active non-game advertisers of any region. But users there have low willingness to pay, according to data, and prefer free downloads. So how does that shape the advertising strategies that SocialPeta sees working in that market?
Well, this is a tricky question and also pretty challenging for those marketers. What we see, the among those advertisers, especially by the end of the video, they will highlight, okay, you can free download it. It's kind of like a summon or kind of like a request. Please download it. And also, they will use some words in the tests of the campaign, like you can get the early bird discount, and you can win the very daily free, as also as the very early users. They will use the campaigns in like the videos or as like the tests, considering the economy is not that good. All those like discount words work pretty good.
Yeah, I see that this issue may be quite challenging and tricky for the marketers, for the local marketers. And we see that the messaging has to adapt completely to the user's price sensitivity. And that definitely makes sense. So by now, we've covered some market trends. We dove deeper into the regional specificities, touched upon AI integration into ad creatives and apps themselves. And now I'd suggest you wrap up our fascinating discussion with a few quick questions. And it's called Blitz Round in our episodes. So the first question, if I asked you to name three words that describe social PETA, what would they be?
Well, good question. First of all, powerful. Secondly, we are intelligent. Then we need to guarantee we provide newest data. So the third one is efficiency.
Yeah, I really like the transfer. Thank you so much. And what about the upcoming goals on your roadmap? So, what's the most exciting thing Social Beta is working on right now that you can share with us?
Well, we analyze and we present so many AI products on their advertising aspects. So we will also to embrace this trend. On the good aspects, we do have a lot of data accumulated in our server. What we need to do is we should demonstrate all the conclusions, all the insights in a more intelligent ways. That's why one of the most important directions we are heading to is AI analysis feature.
Yeah, that sounds really great. And I'm very curious and excited to see it appearing in the social beta analysis tools. I can just congratulate you and be waiting for the launch of this feature. And last question for you. You see billions of creatives across every market and category vertical. What's one trend you are watching in the data right now that most advertisers haven't caught onto yet, but will be taken in the next 2 years?
Okay, you see, both of us, we are not the technical person. However, while we are talking, the open claw launched, which means for a very normal person who is not a technical one, they can develop the tools with the cloud just in a very short time, just maybe a weekend. They can build a SaaS or they can build an application. So from my perspective, when the development barrier is extremely low, and it means that how they win the users will be extremely challenging. And for the bigger advertisers, when they started doing the growth, they may start with a paid ad campaign. They may run it by themselves, or they may work with a agency AdChampagne. They want to maxim the results. They will need to consider multiple ways. What we see is they may combine KOL at the very beginning, so how they combine those influencer with the campaign will be one of the challenges. And we see the trend that for some advertisers, they may ask this KOL to record a video and put it on this KOL's channel. Meanwhile, they will double use this video as one of the creative to run the campaign on the platforms. So this is one of the trend. We already see it. And in the upcoming year, we still reckon that KOL is another one important approach if they need to acquire more users.
Thank you so much for sharing it because I think it's rather surprising and meaningful on the other side. And I think our listeners, marketers, should keep it in mind and check how it will be appearing in the next 2 years. So, Summer, this has been just incredibly insightful. Thank you so much for sharing your time and expertise with us today. And thanks for joining us and having such a nice conversation.
Thank you. Yeah.
So thanks a lot to all our listeners. Subscribe and don't miss the next episodes. Thanks a lot for watching us and listening to us. See you in the next one.
See you.